Okay, here's the drama. Oh my god, that's so juicy. Hi everyone, my name is Tia. Happy November. I had almost too much time on my hands this month, so I read 19 books in October. We're gonna start with my 5 stars and just go down from there. My first one I want to talk about, I'm so excited about. It's called 4 Weekends and a Funeral. Oh God, please just trust me. It doesn't have a cover yet because it's an arc that comes out next August 6th, 2024. So please keep your eye out for it. Strap in. You meet Allison, and Allison is attending the funeral of her ex-boyfriend named Sam when she's actually roped into pretending that she's still dating Sam. So she's like the current girlfriend instead of the ex-girlfriend. So it's like an interesting, odd twist on the fake dating trope. The funeral is where she meets Adam, Sam's best friend. Yikes. Adam is so Nick from New Girl coded, okay? That's all I really want to tell you about him because to me, that's perfect. He's perfect. Adam and Allison get roped into cleaning up Sam's apartment together. Oh my god. That's hilariously sad. What a premise, right? Their banter, hilarious. The chemistry, the sexual tension. It had me in a chokehold. It had me in a chokehold. Not only is this such a heartfelt romantic comedy, laugh out loud funny, but I feel like it had a lot of important sentiments about grief and survivor's guilt, specifically from breast cancer. Through the silly moments, there were some really serious ones that were handled really delicately and really well. Oh, hi Fiki. And the ending was literally perfect. You cannot have asked for a better ending. I had butterflies to the last like 5-10%. I was eating this book up. I also read another arc that is coming out on May 7th of next year. It's called Cinema Love. Oh god, oh, everyone's joining the party now. Figaro's head and his little nose. I love you guys. Right off the bat, writing is exceptional. The way he writes grief, it's like a physical weight on the characters. A grotesque, raw, and unabashed look into human nature. I think it was not graphic, but there are some depictions of being a human that were like straight up visceral. It shows that love a lot of the times comes with really confusing, contradictory feelings like jealousy, hatred, and disgust. You honestly see their true colors, the good and the bad, and you end up really admiring all the characters anyway, just for their like sheer determination to keep on living. This is a queer historical fiction. It's spanning from the 90s in rural China to 2020 in New York City. You're following the small group of people and they're all like kind of connected somehow. I don't want to give anything away. For example, 2 characters, we've got Old Second, that's his name, and Bao Mei. They are married in New York City, but they're not in love. Bao Mei used to man the ticket booth for something called the Workers' Cinema back in rural China before they immigrated. It was a rundown theater. Gay men actually went to go hook up essentially and like hide from their wives and hide from society. And Old Second used to go there a lot. So you follow their achingly painful journey to America and the follow of what happens after they immigrate. Let me just read you a little bit of the blurb. We bear witness to the tensions of immigration and how memory forever weighs down the present. Cinema Love is a big-hearted and heart-shattering novel about desire, secrets, grief, and how we care for one another and how we survive. Oh, chills. It's such a powerful book. It was phenomenal. I ended up rereading a 5-star, which is Thank You for Listening by Julia Whalen. This book is perfect to me. So Julia Whalen used to be an actress. Now she's a very well-known audiobook narrator for good reason. I feel like she makes characters truly jump out of the pages. She wrote a romance about 2 audiobook narrators falling in love. It's equal parts charming, clever, insightful, heartfelt. Oh my god. Since she is the one to audio narrate her own book, I highly recommend picking up the audiobook versus the physical copy. I mean, you could read along, but I feel like it's so much more entertaining. She made it read like a conversation, if that makes sense. So for her to read it to you, like the inflection changes, she changes accents and her tone of voice. God, she just has perfect comedic timing. Our main character here is h0rny. She used to be an actress. There was an incident. Now she wears an eye patch and she decided to switch to audiobook narration. She used to do romance genre audiobook narrations, but she has since left the romance genre until the agent of a renowned author who recently passed away. The agent reaches out to h0rny and says, hey, this author actually really wanted you specifically to do the narration of her last romance project. Would you be willing to do it? She's being paired with this other narrator, Brock McKnight. And if that sounds like a poor name, it was done on purpose. It's his pseudonym, and he's like this fully anonymous dude who's known for the super sexy voice, right? So h0rny and the guy behind Brock McKnight strike up this connection over emails and texts. But I think what I love so much about this book is it's very well-rounded. I think it's so much more than a romance. It has a lot about self-acceptance in a very genuine way. It doesn't feel out of place in this book. And there's a lot to be said about their familial relationship, love in different forms. Just wow. I finally feel like I have a good mystery to talk to you about. It Girl by Ruth Ware. I read it as an audiobook. Narration is by Imogen Church, and I'm now a big fan of Imogen Church. I was absolutely addicted to this book. Okay, here's the drama. April is married to this guy named Will, and she's pregnant in present time. But a decade ago, they were just friends at Oxford. They had a friend group, and April's bestie was named Hannah. And Hannah was actually murdered their first year at Oxford. And then flash forward in the present time, the guy who was convicted of the murder, his name is Neville. April actually helped put him away because she testified against Neville in court. Neville dies in prison. Through his entire life, like this decade, whatever, how long has passed, he has been very insistent that he had nothing to do with Hannah's death. Oh my God, this is so messy. April is spiraling about her future. She is pregnant with Will's child, right? A decade ago, Will and Hannah used to hook up on the down low at Oxford. Oh my God, that's so juicy. As like dark as it sounds, I think it was like an entertaining read because there's typical bitchy college drama, the drinking, the partying, the crushes, but then there's also the flipping of the back and forth timeline and seeing April's past kind of unravel in the present day. And she's your narrator, obviously. So you're spiraling right along with April, and it's just a roller coaster. I will say, even though this is a 5-star read for me, it is almost strikingly obvious who did it. But you have no idea why or how. The how is what really got me. 5-star read, but it did not have to be as long as it was because this was my first Ruth Ware book. It was like so atmospheric. Like I really got into the Oxford campus. So for me, those small details were really fun and immersive. But I think if you have read Ruth Ware's stuff already, you'll be like, I need you to get to the point, Ruth. This book specifically, it really did work for me. So those are the 5 stars that I read this month. And we're gonna go to my 4 stars, which are still books that I really enjoyed. They were just not right up there for me. I actually just recently finished Family Meal by Brian Washington. I really liked it. That didn't sound very convincing, but hold on. We're following Cam, and Cam was living in LA with his boyfriend Kai when Kai dies. I don't really want to give you too much because the death is part of Cam's narrative, but I will say please be mindful going into this book. There is police violence against a minority, specifically a Black man. It's not a graphic scene. It is mentioned, and I did want to put that out there. After Kai dies, Cam moves back to his hometown in Houston where he grew up with his family friend TJ. But in present day, things are pretty stilted between Cam and TJ. They haven't really talked for a few years, even though they were inseparable when they were younger, and that, my friends, is life. Washington just hits the ball out of the park when it comes to writing fucking real, raw-ass human beings when it comes to his characters. He wrote about self-destructive tendencies and how sometimes that doesn't affect just one person, but those people around you who care about you. He wrote about self-preservation and how to stay alive when it feels impossible. He was writing about food and how it can bring people together. It was about what a community can do for one person. This book encapsulated a lot of what life really is, and I think that is what is so beautiful about his stuff. Something that I love about Brian Washington, he is very intentional with making queer characters with a lot of depth to them, and the central issue that they deal with is almost always never about their queerness. The queerness of them is just an essential part of their identity, and then you go from there. Just how fucking gay this book is was very refreshing. But the fact that I'm laughing and smiling about it, please don't mistake it that it is a very harrowing tale of what it means to be a human in the face of tragedy and also just in the face of regular everyday life. I thought it was fantastic. And then a fantasy book that I read that I gave 4 stars was The Cruel Prince, which is exciting. It's my first like true enemies to lovers book. I thought I was getting enemies to lovers when I started Divine Rivals. So was Fourth Wing. That also wasn't enemies to lovers. But this was true enemies to lovers. Like they actually wanted to kill each other at the beginning. Oh, I also didn't know that fae was a thing. I was just under the impression fae was something that ACOTAR made up. Fae people are like fantastical. They have like little pointy elf ears and they're supposed to be very physically beautiful and very powerful. They're immortals. Jude is definitely way more complex than a main character I expected from a YA fantasy. I loved how how we got so much more than just a budding romance, if you can even call what they had a romance. I don't think so. Jude's parents were murdered by her half-sister's fairy dad, who comes into the human world to get her sister back, but he ends up taking all the sisters back to fairyland to raise them. And Jude is essentially one of the only humans in fairyland who lives there that isn't a slave for the fairies. And definitely it comes off that part of her despises being seen as weaker or lesser than them just because she is a human being. Fairies are literally not capable of lying. That's not something that their species can do. So Jude, since she's human, she can say whatever the fuck she wants. So she definitely uses that to her advantage to garner some power of her own. I was just so pleasantly surprised by how Jude turns out not to be, I don't want to call her an anti-hero, but she's definitely more than just a typical heroine. Heroine? Heroine. The heroine. Is it heroin? That's a drug. Anyway, what was I saying? She's not the traditional YA heroine. She's also not quite an anti-hero, maybe. She has some twisted motivations and she actively goes and seeks out trouble. And I feel like Carden is an asshole. He's actually so funny and he was so sassy in the book. I was so pleasantly surprised by how much I enjoy this book. So I'm definitely gonna finish the series. And then I read Caught Up by Liz Tomforday. And I know that this is the third of the Windy City series. This is the only one I rated 4 stars. I was so excited to hear that this is a baseball romance. I freaking love baseball. Kai is a single dad. He's a full-time ace pitcher, but he almost quits because he has this new little tiny little cute baby that's his that he wants to raise. But the team manager insists that he stays on the team to play. He's at the top of his career. They can definitely make it work by hiring all these babysitters, but they're never up to Kai's insane single dad helicopter standards. So he keeps firing people. But the team manager's daughter, Millie, she comes into town. So Miller ends up becoming the MLB babysitter and she and Max instantly get along. It's so fucking cute. I used to babysit for like several years and just seeing little kiddos grow up, have their own little personalities, and yeah, I love kids. So I think that really got to me. The fact that I love baseball in real life really helped me because I was so interested in building the personality behind the star player. It was such a fun thing for me to do. And I've never been interested in reading a single parent trope. So I was so surprised by how much I had fun with this book. What really made this a level up romance for me was the parallels between the characters and the life lessons that you learn. Like, I'm not gonna say anything more because I don't want to spoil it. And oh my God, they were teaching us how love is not transactional, how our life aspirations change over time and how that's okay, but it's difficult to accept sometimes. As much as I liked it, ew, she keeps calling him baseball daddy, which, like, oh my God, that made me want to like gag when I said that out loud. I skipped over a lot of the third act conflict because it just kind of got really drawn out. Despite all that, I honestly think I love the message behind this story. You don't stay for the smut, you stay for the characters. I read The Kiss Quotient, which is a book that I actually DNF'd in 2021. It was too cringy. You just have to muscle through it though, okay? The beginning is real tough, but the good parts come afterwards. So Stella has Asperger's, which is a type of autism, and in part because of her autism, she's very particular about certain things like physical sensations. Stella hires this male escort, Michael, to teach her how to be good in bed because she thinks she needs to learn how to do that to eventually find a good life partner. Michael feels really shitty for exploiting this kind, innocent woman for money because he doesn't truly understand why she needs an escort in the first place. I felt the same way about Caught Up as I did in this book, where the budding romance is kind of what kept me reading rather than the smutty parts of it. Michael's family, he's half Vietnamese, I believe. It's kind of a big part of who he is and what's important to him. And she honestly like fumbles the bag a bit when it comes to meeting his family because of her social skills. And it's like so endearing that it's charming. But I don't think I'm invested enough in the side characters to continue the series because I know there are 2 more books, but I really do appreciate the autism representation in a female contemporary romance lead. I've not read one before, so I thought it was really cool. Those are my 4 stars. Let's get into my 3-star reads. And I feel like a lot of these books I did like to read, but there are reasons why they're 3 stars, not 4 stars. So the first one, I read Happily Never After, which is by Lynn Painter. It was an arc, and it's coming out March 1st of next year. Lynn Painter is actually the author who wrote Better Than the Movies. I freaking hate that book. I feel like that is one of the most like controversy book opinions that I have versus the general population. Anyway, I decided to take a chance because I think the premise is just so funny. Sophie gets out of her wedding by hiring a wedding objector, Max. And Max's job is literally, he goes around to weddings and objects during the ceremony when they're like, does anyone object to this union of whatever? And he stands up, he's like, I do. He helps people who wants to get out of a marriage without having to pay all the fees that come along with canceling a wedding very last minute. They strike up an unlikely friendship and they start hanging out. I will say it was pretty cute. It's a contemporary romance, but it is a lot about physical chemistry. Yeah, I get it, but like they could not go on one date without talking about sex. That got kind of old. But the banter, undeniably good. The concept was so outlandish that it was hilarious. But because I read Happily Never After, right, I got into this phase where I wanted more smut in my books. Okay, I'll admit it. I was possessed by some like horny Halloween ghost that really wanted to read more smut. So I did. That is why I've read the entire Windy City series. Oh my God, it's hot. I'm toasty. Okay, in the Windy City series, you inevitably trade character development for multiple sex scenes, like so many. But I found Mile High to be pretty okay. Xander's is borderline intolerable. The male main character at the beginning, he's supposed to be this very assholey fuckboy star hockey player. He literally keeps a notes page like on his phone of all the girls that he fucks in different cities so that when the hockey team travels to that city, he can hit up certain women for their distinct trait in bed. Oh my God. How did he get away with that? Stevie is the hockey team's flight attendant. She was pretty cool. I ended up skimming a lot of the last half of it. I was like, okay, geez, I get it. But the ending was fucking adorable. It was like a solid 3 stars. And then the right move, Izzy was my goat in Mile High. Izzy is Stevie's bestie, gonna get together with Stevie's twin brother, Ryan. I would say, again, after 60-70% of the book, I got kind of tired of the smut. It was so long. Overall, it was okay. And then I read The Body in Question, which is literary fiction. It's quite short. I'd say it was very mundane. The story surrounds a woman and a man. They're both summoned to jury duty at the same time. They strike up an affair. But this book low-key made me feel stupid. Not because of any difficult language. It's actually very easy to read, but I just don't think I understand why it was written, especially when it came to the ending. Like, what was the point of this book? I thought I would end up liking the main character. I actually did understand, not that I agree with, but I understand why she did have her affair because we kind of get into like her internal monologue. But I thought she would grow and learn from it. But with that ending, I feel like she didn't learn. I feel like it was very unsatisfying how the story ends. But it was interesting because it was a mundane side of a murder case. They're on a jury duty, obviously, but it focuses on the jurors. So I'm used to reading very high stakes murder mystery, the literal crime, versus this book, which is the exact opposite. It was the flip side of a murder case. I don't know. Overall, it was very clinical. I don't think it was bad though. It was just very plain to me. And then I also read I Have Some Questions for You by Rebecca Makkai, which is also kind of a different take about an old crime. And Rebecca Makkai is very famous. I have The Great Believer sitting on my shelf and I haven't read it yet. I'm excited to read it, but I'm also terrified because I feel like it'll make me more depressed than I already am. And I don't think I'm ready for that. I've heard that people who read this first and are a fan of Rebecca Makkai were disappointed in I Have Some Questions for You. Even without reading this, I can kind of see why. Firstly, this book fell flat because it had no reason being as long as it was. And then there were so many elements going on in the book. Unfortunately, it all felt very surface level because we couldn't truly dive deep into anything because there was so much going on. For example, the main character's ex-husband gets Twitter canceled. He's like a famous artist or something, and then a female independent artist comes out with grooming allegations against the ex-husband. And it's kind of not a random side plot, but it's definitely out there. We just never hear any resolution about that. It was briefly mentioned a few times and then was swept under the rug, which is like the irony of it all, right? Lots of things were left unresolved, but it was still an interesting-ish book. Like there was so much going on that I did want to find out what actually happened, but not really. And then I got another arc, She's Not Sorry, which is by Mary Kubica. It comes out on April 2nd of next year, and Mary Kubica wrote one of my all-time favorite adult mysteries, Local Woman Missing. So I was super stoked to get this arc. We follow Megan, who is an ICU nurse, and she is a newly single mom of a teenage daughter after her divorce. And then this new patient, Caitlin, comes into the ICU. She's actually in a coma after she jumps off a bridge. Megan is too emotionally attached to this patient. The question doesn't become, why did Caitlin jump? Or like, why did this happen? It becomes more, who pushed Caitlin off the bridge? The story kind of spirals from there. Cubica does such a good job of instilling doubt into every single one of the characters you're introduced to, so you never know who to trust, who's at fault. I really did enjoy the twist. Maybe someone who's read more mystery could see it from a mile away, but I was like gobsmacked. I read it in almost one sitting. And then I read One of Us is Dead. You're following this group of suburban women in Buckhead, I forgot, some state in the South. Jenny owns the local salon. She knows literally all the tea from all the housewives. There's like this head bitch who bosses everyone around, and then there's a lady who's obsessed with the local politician, blah blah blah, whatever, suburban drama. The narrative starts at the police station where Jenny is like, okay, let me tell you everything from the beginning. So you obviously know that something went wrong with these group of women, you're just not really sure what. It honestly just got really exhausting to hear about the drama. Like, yeah, I'd want to kill you guys too, you know? I liked the twist at the end, but I don't think it was super entertaining. And then I also read Everyone Here is Lying. Stanhope is the perfect little neighborhood. The kids walk to school, but then one day, this little 9-year-old girl, Ella, she goes missing. And right before she goes missing though, her dad, William, comes home after getting dumped by his side chick. He's having an affair and she dumps him. And so he goes home, he wants some alone time, but he finds Ella at home. And it's like in the middle of the day, so Ella's supposed to be at school. So he's all pissed off. They get into a fight. And doesn't that just sound so awful? This grown man is getting into a fight with his daughter after coming home from an affair. I would have rated this higher if the plot didn't just totally run off the cliff in the last quarter of the book. It was just so absurd how this ended. It ruined the whole interesting town dynamic. And then I went on a Ruth Ware spiral because of how much I enjoyed The It Girl. I started off reading The Turn of the Key, where we follow our main character, Rowan. Now she, as the story is being told, she's in jail for murder. She's writing this letter to her attorney because she's trying to plead her case of not being guilty. She is a Londoner who applied to be this rich family's live-in nanny out in the boonies somewhere in Scotland, like super fancy house. Everything is controlled by an app, so I think this might be some kind of social criticism about smart devices. The mom has surveillance cameras up in every single room. The daughters of the family tell Rowan that it's not safe in their house, like there are ghosts here. Going back to the present, one of the daughters is dead and Rowan is the accused. This was more of a twisted paranormal almost mystery, and I do not like horror, I do not like paranormal. But once you get to the twist at the end, everything that was told to you in this book is like blown to oblivion. So I thought that was kind of ridiculous. Those are my 3 stars. Going to my 2 stars, which are books I actively disliked. Another Ruth Ware book I read was The Lying Game, and this was just so fucking boring. We're following Issa, who is a new mom. She's got a 6-month-old baby. She gets a text from her old bestie Kate from college, and Kate says, I need you. Issa leaves her confused husband at home. She completely ditches him. She grabs her baby and she hops on like a several hour long train ride for someone that haven't communicated with in 15 years. In boarding school, they used to do this thing called the lying game, which is just when you lie to people for shits and giggles, and then you get uncomfortable or upset when the people who you lie to get mad at you for lying to them. And it was just like, yeah, the characters were so god awful. The plot was bad. And then I read another arc, Bye Baby, that comes out March 5th of next year. And of course, I'm not going to give you any spoilers, but this book is just fucking ridiculous. Actually, I think the worst book I've read this year. So the premise of the book, this girl named Billy hears screams from the apartment upstairs, right? Coming from Cassie, who lives upstairs. Cassie just discovered that her baby is missing. Someone kidnapped her baby. And then Billy looks down at her arms and Billy is carrying Cassie's baby. So she's the one that stole her. That sounds really intriguing, right? The only good thing about this book is the premise. There are so many things that happened in this book that like shocked me and disgusted me. None of them were about the baby being kidnapped. First of all, please be mindful that there should be content warnings about pedophilia and sexual assault and sexual harassment. There are explicit scenes of pedophilia and sexual assault. I honestly wish I DNF'd this. Like, I know my boundaries and I should have DNF'd it, but I didn't because it was an arc and I want to review it. But like, wow. None of the characters in this book are likable, and that is an understatement. They're all basically insufferable
and very hard to feel bad for.
One of the worst, if not the worst book I read this year. Whew, so glad I got that off my chest. Those were the 19 books I read this month. Please let me know what your favorite book is that you read. Thank you so much for watching, and I will catch you in the next video. Have a good one. Don't fall.